You know, usually when you look at an old architectural blueprint, you expect it to look, well, old.
Yeah, firmly in the past.
Exactly. You expect it to belong in the past. It is like looking at the design plans for a medieval castle with a moat or, I don't know, a really old stone bridge.
Right. You look at the faded paper and the strange drawings and think, wow, people really used to build things that way.
Yeah, and you think, good thing we have modern engineering now.
It is a piece of history, like a relic of how a totally different society operated, something you just study but never actually experience in real life.
But then imagine you find a blueprint drawn almost 80 years ago. You unfold it, you study the lines, and this very slow, very cold realization just sort of washes over you.
Because you look up from the paper.
Yeah, you look around and you realize you are already living inside the building it describes.
Every single hallway.
Every hidden camera, every locked door. It is not an old relic at all. It is the exact, precise design of the modern world you wake up in every single day.
That creeping sense of recognition is really the terrifying reality of the text we are exploring today.
It really is.
I mean, it functions less as a traditional fiction story and much more as a dire warning. A warning that stubbornly keeps coming true, decade after decade.
And we are going to explore every single corner of that blueprint today. Welcome, everyone. I am so thrilled you are here, taking this journey with us.
We are very glad to have you here.
Definitely. Before we dive all the way in, I want to formally welcome you to our YouTube channel, English Coffee Corner.
Welcome to English Coffee Corner.
We build these deep dives entirely for you, so please take just a quick second right now to subscribe to the channel and hit that like button on this video.
It really does help out a lot.
It is the best way to support us, and it ensures you never miss out on our future conversations.
Yes. Welcome to you, our listener. We are genuinely happy to have you sitting down with us today. We have a very layered and, well, a very important conversation mapped out for you.
We absolutely do. Today, we are pointing a massive magnifying glass at George Orwell's monumental 1949 dystopian novel, 1984.
And we have an enormous collection of material on the table to help us do this.
A massive stack.
Right. We are pulling from historical analyses of the 1940s, visceral reviews of modern theatrical adaptations, and deeply researched essays on digital surveillance.
Not to mention essays on the weaponization of human language, which is just fascinating.
It is a vast amount of information, and our mission today is to really synthesize it.
Yeah, and keeping with the spirit of English Coffee Corner, we will be using clear, simple English to guide you through these incredibly complex, heavy ideas.
That is the core mission of this deep dive.
We are going to walk through the terrifying gray streets of Orwell's fictional world of Oceania. But, we are not here to just summarize a famous book you might have been forced to read in high school.
No, not at all.
We are here to uncover exactly why a novel written almost 80 years ago by a dying man remains the ultimate, perfect mirror for our modern relationship with technology, truth, and government power.
And I will be looking very closely at the mechanics of that power.
Yeah.
What is constantly fascinating to me is how Orwell's warnings have manifested in our daily lives in ways he never possibly could have imagined with 1940s technology.
Right, because he didn't have smartphones.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet in other ways, he predicted our behavior perfectly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we really cannot understand the nightmare world of 1984 without first understanding the very real, very chaotic world of the 1940s.
The author did not just pull these ideas out of thin air.
No, the intense pressure cooker of his actual life is what created this story.
To understand the book, you must understand the mind of the man who wrote it.
Right.
The author we know as George Orwell was actually born with the name Eric Arthur Blair.
I always forget that.
Yeah, he adopted George Orwell later as a pen name, and his worldview was completely forged in extreme conflict.
I mean, extreme might be a total understatement here. He lived through some truly traumatic history.
He really did.
Like, one of the most defining events for him was the Spanish Civil War in the 1930s. He didn't just read about it in the newspaper.
No, he went there.
He actually traveled to Spain to fight on the front lines, and he experienced severe physical trauma while he was there.
Yes.
He was quite literally shot through the throat by a sniper.
Which is just incredible. He was incredibly lucky to survive that physical injury.
Oh, sure.
I mean, the bullet missed his main artery by a fraction of an inch. But the psychological and political injuries he suffered in Spain were arguably much more permanent.
Oh, so?
Well, he went to Spain as an idealist, wanting to fight against fascism. But while he was in the trenches, He witnessed something deeply disturbing about human nature and political power.
Right. He was watching two extreme political sides fighting for control. On one side, you had the fascist forces led by Francisco Franco. And on the other side, you had the Soviet communist forces, heavily directed by Joseph Stalin, who had involved himself in the Spanish conflict.
And Orwell, who was fighting alongside a smaller, independent leftist group, suddenly found himself targeted by his own supposed allies.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The Soviet-backed communists turned on the other leftist groups. They started arresting them, torturing them, and executing them.
So Orwell is just standing in the middle of this war zone, watching these two completely opposite political systems, fascism on the right, Soviet communism on the left, and he realizes something horrifying.
They're actually behaving in the exact same way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were both acting as ruthless, oppressive dictatorships.
Yeah.
They were both murdering innocent people. And crucially, they were both using lethal, coordinated propaganda to completely control what the public believed about those murders.
He witnessed the death of objective truth.
Yeah.
He saw newspapers reporting heroic battles that never actually happened.
Yeah.
And denying mass arrests that were happening right in front of him.
That would mess anyone up.
He realized that extreme ideology, regardless of whether it claims to be on the left or the right, eventually curves into the exact same shape: total authoritarianism.
And that completely shattered his trust in large government systems.
Completely. And that paranoia only grew during World War II.
Right, because after surviving Spain, Orwell eventually found himself back in London, working for the British Broadcasting Corporation, the BBC.
Yes, he was made the head of the Indian Service from 1941 to 1943.
This is such a vital piece of the puzzle to me. At the BBC, Orwell was essentially functioning as a cog in a massive government propaganda machine.
That was his actual job.
Right. His daily job was to curate and broadcast wartime information to India to ensure the Indian population remained supportive of the British war effort.
Which must have caused him so much internal agony.
I can't even imagine. Here is a man who had just watched propaganda destroy truth in Spain, and now he is sitting inside a giant bureaucratic office building, learning exactly how a government shapes and manipulates information to control a narrative.
He was learning how the machinery of deception works from the inside out.
Yeah, he saw the endless meetings, the memos, the deliberate choice of certain words over others to soften brutal realities.
He was learning the mechanics of a ministry of truth long before he ever wrote about one.
Wow.
And while he was internalizing all of this global chaos, his personal life was collapsing.
The timing of everything is just tragic. In 1945, right at the end of the war, his wife, Eileen, went to the hospital for what was supposed to be a fairly routine operation, and she died under anesthesia.
It was devastating.
And this happened just shortly after they had finally adopted a baby boy.
So layer all of this together.
Okay.
He is carrying the grief of losing his wife suddenly. He is now a single father. His own health is rapidly deteriorating because he is suffering from severe tuberculosis.
Right.
And he is watching the entire globe tear itself apart with new, terrifying weapons.
When you put all those ingredients into a pot, it completely explains why the book feels so incredibly dark, claustrophobic, and bleak.
It does.
It was written by a dying, grieving man who was absolutely terrified of the future.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the world stage at that exact moment was providing him with plenty of reasons to be terrified.
Oh, definitely.
To understand the grand design of the world in 1984, we have to look at a specific historical event that took place in December 1943.
The Tehran Conference.
Yes.
This is such a fascinating historical anchor. The leaders of the three great global powers traveled to Tehran, Iran, for a massive strategic meeting.
Right.
You had U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill, and Soviet leader Joseph Stalin. Three men sitting around a table.
At this conference, these three leaders were essentially looking at a map of the world and planning how they were going to divide up the globe after they defeated Nazi Germany.
Establishing their spheres of influence.
Exactly.
They were carving up the planet like a pie, taking a pen and drawing lines across continents, deciding the fate of billions of people without their consent.
Just casual lines on a map.
Yeah. And this specific real-life event is what directly inspired the geopolitical setting of 1984.
It did.
In the novel, the world is not composed of hundreds of different countries. It is divided into just three massive totalitarian superstates: Oceania, Eurasia, and Eastasia.
And the crucial detail about these three superstates is their relationship with one another.
Right.
They are in a state of perpetual, never-ending war. But it is a war that is designed to never be won.
That is the crazy part. They just constantly shift alliances. Oceania will be at war with Eurasia and allied with Eastasia.
And then,
Then, overnight, the government announces that they are at war with Eastasia, and Eurasia has always been their ally.
and the public just accepts it.
They have to. The actual fighting usually happens on the borders, far away from the citizens.
The purpose of the war is not victory.
No.
The purpose of the war is to consume resources so that the citizens remain poor and to keep the population in a constant state of fear and patriotic frenzy.
It is just a management tool.
Exactly. It is a management tool used by the leaders of all three superstates to maintain their grip on power.
Okay, I have to push back on something here because this seems like a massive contradiction in Orwell's own life based on our sources.
Oh.
We established that he went to Spain to fight for leftist ideals. Throughout his life, he openly identified as a democratic socialist.
He did.
He wanted better conditions for the working class. But in 1984, the evil, terrifying government party that controls Oceania is called INGSOC, which is newspeak for English socialism.
Yes, it is.
So if he was a dedicated socialist, why did he write his most famous book attacking a regime that brands itself as socialist? Isn't he just attacking his own side?
It is a very common question, and, on the surface, it does seem like a massive contradiction.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture of what he learned in Spain, the contradiction completely disappears.
Okay, how so?
You have to separate the marketing label from the actual product. Orwell's core foundational belief was that absolute power corrupts absolutely.
So the ideology itself doesn't actually matter once power is achieved.
Precisely. Orwell was terrified of totalitarianism, regardless of the mask it wears.
Right.
A dictator might hide behind the beautiful words of socialism, or they might hide behind the words democracy, liberty, or national security.
Whatever gets them control.
Exactly. Orwell was issuing a very specific warning to his own political allies. He was saying, look at what happened in the Soviet Union.
Right.
Do not let our desire for equality turn into an excuse to grant a small group of people unlimited power.
I understand. He was warning them not to become the very monster they were trying to defeat.
Exactly.
He was showing them that a dictatorship wearing a friendly, familiar hat is still a dictatorship.
Yes. The label on the bottle might say equality, but the liquid inside is poison. And he wanted to show exactly what society looks like when that poison is swallowed.
Which perfectly transitions us from the high-level politics of Tehran down to the dirty, grounded reality of everyday life in the book.
It is very dirty.
Yeah. The geopolitical map is one thing, but what does it actually feel like to wake up in a world controlled by INGSOC?
The physical environment of the novel is heavily, heavily drawn from Orwell's experience of living in London during and immediately after World War II.
Right, a time of severe rationing.
Rationing and constant bombing.
Let's paint the picture of Airstrip 1. In the world of the novel, the country of Great Britain doesn't even exist anymore.
It's completely gone.
Its history has been erased, and it has been renamed Airstrip 1. It is just a minor province in the massive superstate of Oceania.
And the daily reality of living there is incredibly grim. It is a sensory nightmare.
It really is. The world he built is totally devoid of color or comfort. The cities are described as a landscape of ruin, crumbling Victorian houses patched up with cardboard.
Just cardboard holding things together.
Yeah, and the streets are covered in dust. Buildings that were destroyed by rocket bombs have just been left as piles of rubble.
And the smells. We have to talk about the smells.
Oh, yes. The book opens by describing the hallway of the main character, Winston Smith. It smells strongly of boiled cabbage and old rag mats.
Everything is dirty, everything is breaking down, and nothing ever gets fixed.
And the physical deprivation extends to the food and basic supplies, too.
Because the state is constantly pouring all its resources into the perpetual war effort, the citizens are left with nothing but cheap, synthetic substitutes for real food.
Even the items that the government brands as luxuries are actually borderline toxic.
Very true.
When Winston drinks a state-issued alcohol called Victory Gin, he describes it as smelling like nitric acid. When he swallows it, it feels like being hit on the back of the head with a rubber club.
And then there are the cigarettes. The citizens smoke Victory cigarettes, which are manufactured so poorly that they are loosely packed.
Right.
If you do not hold a cigarette perfectly horizontal, all the cheap tobacco just falls right out onto the floor.
I love that specific detail because it is a direct joke pulled from Orwell's real life.
It is.
During World War II, the British government imported these incredibly cheap, low-quality cigarettes from India to give to the soldiers and the public.
And they were notorious for falling apart in your hands.
Exactly. Orwell took that tiny, annoying frustration from 1940s London and magnified it into a permanent feature of a dystopian nightmare.
He understood that authoritarianism isn't just about grand executions.
No.
It is also about the slow, daily erosion of human dignity through terrible, cheap products. But he also used this grim setting to highlight the massive, hypocritical class divide within Oceania.
Yes, the society is strictly layered. At the very bottom, you have the proles, which is short for the proletariat or the working class.
Wow.
They make up about 85% of the population. They live in absolute squalor, but the government mostly ignores them as long as they go to work and don't cause trouble.
Above the proles, you have the outer party. These are the mid-level government workers, like Winston Smith.
One's living the cabbage life.
Exactly. They're the ones living in the crumbling apartments, drinking the terrible gin, and being constantly watched.
But then, at the very top, you have the inner party, the absolute elite.
Yes.
And we get a glimpse into their lives through a character named O'Brien, who is a powerful inner party member.
When Winston is finally invited into O'Brien's apartment building, the contrast is meant to be shocking to the reader, and it is certainly shocking to Winston.
The differences are immediate. First of all, when Winston walks in, the elevator or the lift actually works.
Which is huge.
It sounds like a small thing, but in Winston's building, the lift is deliberately kept broken to save electricity.
Right.
In O'Brien's building, the smell of cabbage is gone, replaced by the smell of good food and rich tobacco.
And then O'Brien does something that leaves Winston completely paralyzed with shock.
Oh, this part.
O'Brien walks over the telescreen on his wall, the camera that watches everyone, and he simply turns it off.
It is the ultimate flex of power. The outer party members are watched and listened to 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
They don't even have a switch on their screens.
Right. But the elite leaders have the privilege of privacy. They can just shut the surveillance off whenever they feel like it.
Beyond the privacy, O'Brien has access to real, tangible goods. He offers Winston actual wine.
Real wine.
Yes, he has real coffee, real tea, real milk, and real sugar.
Winston has not tasted things like this for decades. He only knows the synthetic chemical versions.
And O'Brien even has a personal servant, an Asian man named Martin, serving the drinks on a silver tray.
The hypocrisy is so thick you could cut it with a knife. The inner party preaches sacrifice and equality to the masses while they live like kings behind closed doors.
Absolutely.
And when you really think about it, this strategy of denying people basic comforts is a genius form of control.
It really is.
We always think of oppression as being dragged away by the police, but Orwell shows us that oppression is also making sure your citizens can never just sit down and enjoy a good, hot cup of real tea.
How so? Walk through the psychology of that.
Well, if every single day is a struggle just to get a razor blade, or to find a piece of meat that isn't rotting, or to fix a leaky pipe, you become exhausted.
Right.
Your entire mental capacity is focused on just surviving the day. An exhausted, cold, poorly fed population is a compliant population.
They simply do not have the physical or mental energy required to organize a rebellion.
Exactly.
That is a very profound observation. Physical poverty and chronic exhaustion are incredibly effective tools of state control. They keep the population grounded in basic survival mode.
Yeah.
But as effective as poverty is, the leaders of Oceania know that physical misery alone is not enough to sustain a dictatorship forever.
Right. Eventually, someone might get enough energy to throw a rock.
Exactly. To achieve total permanent control, you cannot just control the body. You must invade the mind. You have to control reality itself.
And the methods they use to invade the mind are the things that give people nightmares. We are going to break down the mechanics of the thought police, the telescreens, and Room 101 in just a moment.
It gets very dark.
It really does. But first, let's take a quick breather. If you are enjoying this deep dive so far, and if you love exploring these complex concepts with us, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe to English Coffee Corner.
Yes, please do take a moment to subscribe.
Your support allows us to keep analyzing these incredible topics and bringing these conversations directly to you in simple English.
Now, let us return to the terrifying mechanics of control in Oceania. The party has designed a system of surveillance and psychological terror that is unparalleled in literature.
It really is a masterclass in psychological abuse. Let's look at the specific tools they use. First, there is the omnipresent visual of the leader, Big Brother.
The physical description is vital here.
Yeah. The party has plastered massive posters of Big Brother's face on every street corner, in every hallway, in every building.
The posters feature the face of a man about 45 years old, with a heavy black mustache and ruggedly handsome features.
But the defining characteristic is his eyes.
Yes, the eyes.
The eyes are drawn in a very specific, unsettling way. No matter where you stand in the room or how you move, the eyes on the poster appear to be looking directly at you.
And underneath the face is the slogan that has become famous worldwide: Big Brother is watching you.
The psychology of the poster is brilliant. It serves as a constant, low-level anchor of paranoia.
It is a visual reminder that you are never alone. Furthermore, the physical appearance of Big Brother was heavily inspired by real-world dictators.
Right, going back to what Orwell saw.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The heavy mustache and the strong features were designed by Orwell to evoke the imagery of Joseph Stalin or Adolf Hitler figures who demanded not just obedience, but literal worship from their citizens.
And if the posters don't keep you in line, the thought police will.
The thought police.
These are the secret agents who don't just arrest you for committing a crime, they arrest you for thinking about committing a crime.
Orwell based the thought police directly on the real-life mechanisms of Stalin's secret police, the NKVD, which later became the KGB. The terror of the thought police is not just that they have guns. It is that they rely on a network of civilian informants.
That is the most destructive part. They destroy the fabric of trust in society. You cannot trust your neighbor. You cannot trust your spouse.
You really can't.
In the book, children are trained by the state in groups called the spies, and they are actively encouraged to listen at the doors of their own parents.
And report them to the thought police if they say anything against the party.
It isolates every single human being. If you cannot trust your own child, you can never share a rebellious thought with anyone. You are entirely alone in your own head.
And if the thought police do decide you are guilty, you do not get a public trial.
No.
You were simply arrested in the middle of the night and taken to the Ministry of Love.
Which is the most sadistic, twisted name possible for a building dedicated to torture.
It really is.
The Ministry of Love is described as this massive, windowless fortress, and deep inside it is the most feared place in all of Oceania, Room 101.
Room 101 represents the absolute pinnacle of personalized psychological torture.
Yeah.
It is not a standard torture chamber with racks and whips. It is much worse.
In Room 101, the party forces you to face your own specific ultimate phobia. They know everything about you, so they know exactly what breaks you.
Right.
If you are terrified of heights or being buried alive or spiders, that is what is waiting for you in that room. For Winston Smith, his ultimate paralyzing fear is rats.
The genius of Room 101, from the perspective of an authoritarian regime, is that it bypasses logic and bravery.
How so?
Well, a person might be brave enough to withstand physical beatings for a political cause, but a primal phobia completely shatters the rational mind.
Right.
It reduces the victim to a screaming, desperate animal willing to betray absolutely anyone to make the fear stop.
And how do they know all these intimate secrets about everyone? How do they know what you were afraid of or what you whisper in your sleep?
That brings us to the ultimate symbol of 1984, the telescreens.
The telescreens are the technological foundation of the party's power. They are large, oblong metal plaques mounted on the walls of almost every room and public space in Airstrip 1.
And they possess a terrifying dual nature.
There are two insidious things wrapped into one device. On one hand, they act like a television that can never, ever be turned off.
Never.
They constantly blast a stream of government propaganda. They shout out fake statistics about how much iron the country is producing. They play shrill military music, and they announce fictional battle victories.
It is a constant assault of noise pollution.
Yes, exactly. But the second function is what makes them a nightmare.
The telescreens are not just broadcasting. They're also highly sensitive cameras and microphones.
They are watching and listening to the citizens in their own living rooms 24 hours a day.
The level of surveillance is so extreme, it borders on science fiction. The microphones are so incredibly sensitive that they can pick up a whisper in the dark.
This detail always gets me. If a citizen is standing near a screen, the microphone can actually pick up the sound of their heartbeat.
Consider the psychological toll of that reality. You cannot even control your own autonomic nervous system.
Right.
If an announcer says something provocative on the screen and your heart rate slightly increases because you disagree with it, the thought police can register that physical reaction.
Wow.
It forces the citizens to constantly monitor their own facial expressions. A nervous Nordic or a look of anxiety can be interpreted as a face crime.
Face crime. It demands total, permanent acting. You have to perform loyalty even when you are alone in your kitchen.
And the telescreens are also the central focus of a daily mandatory event called the 2 Minutes Hate.
Right, the 2 minutes hate. This is a brilliant piece of social engineering.
It is.
Every single day at a specific time, all party members must stop whatever they are doing, stand in front of the telescreens, and participate in a collective ritual.
The screens suddenly switch from boring statistics to images of the enemies of the state.
The primary target is usually a man named Emmanuel Goldstein, who is described as the leader of a mythical rebel organization called the Brotherhood.
He is the ultimate traitor.
And Orwell heavily based the character of Emmanuel Goldstein on the real historical figure of Leon Trotsky, right?
He did. Trotsky was a key figure in the Russian Revolution, but later became Stalin's most hated political enemy and was eventually assassinated.
During these 2 minutes, the images on the screen get faster and louder. Enemy soldiers marching, Goldstein speaking against Ingsoc.
And the reaction of the citizens is intense.
The reaction of the citizens in the room is explosive. People go absolutely feral. They start screaming at the top of their lungs. They throw books at the screen.
They kick the chairs.
They turn red with furious rage, foaming at the mouth. Why does the party enforce this? Why do they want their citizens whipped into a violent frenzy every single day?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is about managing the psychological pressure of the society.
Right.
The party is fully aware that their citizens are living miserable, deprived lives. They are eating terrible food, working long hours, and living in constant fear.
Yeah.
Naturally, that kind of existence generates an enormous amount of deep, boiling anger inside a human being.
Exactly. They should be furious. But they should be furious at the party.
Precisely. If that anger is left unmanaged, it will eventually turn upward toward the leaders.
Ah, I see.
The 2 Minutes Hate is a valve to release that pressure. The party takes all of that valid organic frustration and artificially shifts it onto a fabricated external enemy.
It is a magic trick of emotion. They provide a safe target. The citizens get to scream, release their tension, and exhaust themselves emotionally.
And by the end of the 2 minutes,
The image of Goldstein is replaced by the calm, reassuring face of Big Brother, and the crowd begins chanting his name in adoration.
they have taken the energy of rebellion and transformed it into the energy of worship.
It is manipulation on a grand societal scale. But the party knows that even with surveillance and emotional manipulation, as long as people can think clearly, they remain a threat.
Yes.
The ultimate goal of Ingsoc is not just to punish rebellion, it is to make rebellion literally impossible to conceive.
And how do you stop someone from thinking? You attack the very tools they use to think. You attack their language.
Which brings us to one of Orwell's most profound and enduring concepts.
The weaponization of language through a state-mandated dialect called newspeak.
Newspeak is the official language of Oceania, intended to completely replace traditional English, which they call Old Speak.
But the fundamental design of newspeak is unlike any other language in human history.
Normal languages expand. As society grows, we invent new words for new concepts. The dictionary gets thicker every year.
Newspeak does the exact opposite. It is a language designed to shrink.
The Ministry of Truth has an entire department dedicated to destroying words. They are literally crossing words out of the dictionary.
The goal is to make the vocabulary smaller and smaller with each new edition.
They eliminate synonyms, they strip words of their secondary meanings, and they promote slogans that crush nuance, like the famous party motto, "Ignorance is strength."
The logic behind newspeak is chillingly pragmatic. We use words to form thoughts. If a word does not exist, the thought associated with that word becomes incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to formulate and communicate.
Here's where it gets really interesting. I want to try and visualize this for you, the listener.
They do.
Think of your mind like a construction worker, and words are your tools. Imagine you want to build a house. You need a hammer, a saw, nails, measuring tape.
Sure.
But every single day, the government comes to your site and takes away one of your tools. First, they take the saw. Then they take the nails. Finally, they take the hammer.
And eventually,
you are just standing in an empty field with your bare hands. You have the desire to build a house, but you have absolutely no tools to build it.
that is an exceptional analogy.
Yeah.
Without tools, construction stops.
It is the exact same with language. If the government completely removes the words freedom, justice, equality, and rebellion from the dictionary, how can you organize a revolution?
You literally cannot articulate the concept to your neighbor.
You cannot build the thought in your own head. You are left with a vague feeling of dissatisfaction, but you have no mental tools to construct an argument against the state.
You are rendered intellectually mute. And newspeak works in tandem with another psychological requirement of the party, a concept known as doublethink.
Doublethink is a concept that almost hurts my brain just trying to explain it because it is so irrational.
It requires intense mental gymnastics. Doublethink is the ability to hold two completely contradictory beliefs in your mind at the exact same time and to genuinely accept both of them as true.
It is not just lying. Lying is knowing the truth and saying something else. Doublethink is actually believing the lie.
Exactly.
You have to learn a fact and then consciously force yourself to forget it. And then this is the crazy part. You have to forget that you forgot it.
It is a continuous, active process of self-deception.
It is the only way a citizen can survive in a society where the government constantly changes its narrative.
If the party says that 2 plus 2 equals 5, you must not only say it equals 5, you must genuinely believe it in your core, while simultaneously understanding the mathematical reality required to build a bridge.
And we see doublethink in action perfectly through Winston's job. He works in the Ministry of Truth.
Which, again, is an incredibly ironic name.
Because his entire job is to manufacture lies. He works in the records department.
His task is the constant, never-ending alteration of historical documents. The party cannot ever be seen as being wrong.
Right.
So if Big Brother makes a speech predicting that the chocolate ration will go up, but then a month later the chocolate ration actually goes down, Winston's job is to fix the past.
Right. He receives a slip of paper with the new reality. He goes into the archives, finds the old newspapers containing Big Brother's original speech, and he literally rewrites the article so that Big Brother predicted the chocolate reduction perfectly.
And then he destroys the evidence.
He burns the original correct newspaper in a pneumatic tube called a memory hole.
He is destroying objective history. Every book, every photograph, every pamphlet is constantly being updated to match the current political needs of the party.
History is not a fixed timeline. It is a canvas that is repainted every single day.
There's a very famous quote from the book that perfectly summarizes why they do this. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past.
Wow. If you can convince a population that their lives are mathematically better today than they were 10 years ago by showing them fake statistics, you eliminate their desire to rebel in the future.
The party holds a monopoly on reality.
It is absolute terrifying control. And because Orwell articulated these methods so clearly, newspeak, doublethink, the rewriting of history, his own name has become a permanent part of our modern vocabulary.
It has. The adjective Orwellian is incredibly ubiquitous today.
It really is.
It is widely considered to be the most frequently used adjective derived from the name of a modern writer, far surpassing terms like Kafkaesque or Dickensian.
We hear it constantly in political commentary and on the news. When a politician introduces a bill that increases government surveillance but names it the Privacy Protection Act, journalists will immediately call it Orwellian.
Yes, we use it to describe anyone who tries to pervert reality.
Or use deceptive language to hide brutal truth, or implement massive surveillance systems. It is our universal shorthand for creeping authoritarianism.
But there is a distinct difference between understanding the concept of Orwellian on an intellectual level and experiencing the visceral reality of what it actually means.
What do you mean?
Well, reading about Room 101 in the quiet comfort of your own home is an isolated intellectual experience.
That is such a good point. When you're reading the book, you can put it down, you can go make a sandwich, you control the pacing of the horror.
Exactly. But seeing that horror brought to life, physically enacted in a room with you, that triggers a completely different, deeply visceral reaction.
This naturally leads us to examine how 1984 has been adapted for the stage, specifically focusing on a highly controversial and powerful play that debuted in the last decade.
Yes. Let's dive into the theatrical adaptations. We need to talk about the play created by directors Robert Icke and Duncan Macmillan.
Right. It debuted in the UK in 2013 and eventually moved to Broadway in New York in 2017. And the details we have regarding the production of this play are absolutely mind-blowing.
The creators made a very deliberate artistic choice. They did not want to soften the edges of Oceania for a modern, comfortable theater audience.
No, they didn't.
They wanted the audience to physically feel the disorientation and the sensory assault that Winston Smith experiences.
They essentially turned the theater into a psychological weapon. They used extreme, aggressive theatrical effects to completely disorient the viewers.
The lighting alone was intense.
The production utilized blinding, flashing strobe lights that would hit the audience without warning. They used sudden drops into pitch-black darkness.
The sound design was equally aggressive. They blasted audio effects that sounded like heavy industrial jackhammers, shaking the seats and rattling the nerves of everyone in the room.
And their set design for the Ministry of Love was particularly striking.
Very much so. Instead of making the torture chamber look like a dark medieval dungeon, they went the opposite direction.
They flooded the stage with a stark, clinical, blindingly bright white light.
It looked more like a modern, hyper-expensive minimalist clothing store or a sterile laboratory, which somehow makes the violence happen in sharper focus.
And the violence depicted on that bright white stage was pushing the absolute limits of theatrical endurance.
The performances during the interrogation scenes were remarkably intense.
The actor Tom Sturridge played Winston, and a veteran actor named Reed Birney played the torturer, O'Brien.
And the specific scenes were gruesome.
We have details of a specific gruesome scene where Winston is strapped down, and he literally gets his teeth ripped out of his head on stage.
There is fake blood pouring everywhere.
Winston is screaming in agonizing pain, thrashing against his restraints, begging for it to stop.
And the crucial element of that scene is O'Brien's demeanor. While Winston is screaming in agony, O'Brien is not yelling or acting like a cartoon villain.
Yeah.
He is just speaking to Winston in a completely calm, reasonable, normal conversational voice.
The stark contrast between the horrific violence and the calm, bureaucratic voice of the torturer makes it infinitely more disturbing.
It is torture as a casual administrative task.
And the reaction from the audiences who bought tickets to this play was completely unprecedented.
Unprecedented is truly the correct word. The play provoked violent physical reactions from the crowd.
The audiences completely lost their minds. During the torture scenes, people were literally screaming back at the stage from their seats.
Multiple people fainted in the aisles and had to be carried out.
People were physically vomiting in the theater. Even the famous actress Jennifer Lawrence attended a performance, and the sensory overload and violence were so intense that she had to run out and throw up in the lobby.
The emotional temperature in the room was so high that it caused breakdowns in social order among the audience members themselves.
People started getting into loud arguments, and in some cases, actual fistfights broke out in the theater after the curtain fell.
Fistfights at a Broadway play.
The producers actually had to hire and deploy large security guards inside the theater to stand in the aisles and keep the audience from rioting.
They eventually had to institute a strict age restriction banning anyone under 13 from attending.
Because the actors on stage saw a small child in the front row during a bloody scene and were genuinely terrified for the child's psychological well-being.
This raises an important question.
What's that?
Why did this specific stage production cause such a violent, unhinged physical reaction from modern American and British audiences? After all, these are societies that watch violent movies and play violent video games every day.
Our sources provide a really brilliant analysis of this phenomenon from a theater reviewer who attended the show.
The reviewer posits a theory about the insulation of Western audiences. People living in affluent Western democratic countries are, for the most part, entirely insulated from the brutal realities of global state-sponsored torture.
Right. They might read about enhanced interrogation techniques in a news article or hear about a secret prison operating in a foreign country.
But it is always abstract.
It is a sterile phrase in a newspaper. It happens far away, out of sight.
Exactly. Even when that torture is being conducted in the name of their own national security, they never have to smell it. They never have to hear the screams. They never have to look the victim in the eye.
They are completely protected by geographical and political distance.
But this play completely destroys that distance. It locks the audience in a room and forces them to experience that extreme violence by proxy.
They cannot look away. It puts the screaming, bleeding victim right in front of their faces in real time under bright white lights.
It violently bursts their comfortable bubble and wakes them up to the physical reality of what state violence actually looks like.
It removes the comfortable abstraction. And it is worth noting that this is not the first time an adaptation of 1984 has shattered the public's comfort.
No, back in 1954, the BBC aired a live television adaptation of the novel.
And it caused a massive national outrage. People flooded the BBC with phone calls complaining that it was far too terrifying and subversive to be shown on television.
There was also the famous 1984 film adaptation starring John Hurt as Winston and Richard Burton in his final film role as O'Brien, which really cemented the visual aesthetic of the bleak, gray world.
The story simply refuses to stay in the past. It constantly reinvents itself for each new generation.
We're even seeing it adapted from new perspectives,
Yeah.
such as the recently published novel Julia by Sandra Newman, which has been officially approved by the Orwell estate.
It retells the entire story of 1984, but shifts the lens to show the world through the eyes of Winston's pragmatic lover, Julia.
It proves that we simply cannot escape the gravity of this story.
And honestly, we don't even need to buy a ticket to a Broadway theater or turn on a movie to see the world of Oceania. We don't have to look at a stage at all.
No, we do not. To observe the modern manifestation of Oceania, we merely have to look down at our own hands or inside our own pockets.
Which brings us to arguably the scariest part of this entire deep dive. The transition from fiction to reality through modern, diffuse surveillance.
When Orwell wrote the book, he imagined surveillance as a highly centralized, top-down system.
In Oceania, the telescreens are forced upon the population by the state.
The government physically drills the cameras into the walls of your apartment, and you have absolutely no choice in the matter. It is a punishment.
But the reality of our world today is fundamentally different and, in a way, far more chilling. We are living in an era of what is called diffuse surveillance.
Diffuse surveillance means that the watching is not done by a single giant government camera in the center of the town square.
It is spread out across millions of interconnected devices owned by various corporations, data brokers, and government agencies.
And the most massive, shocking difference between Winston Smith's telescreen and our modern reality is the issue of consent.
Yes, the element of volition.
We don't have government agents forcing cameras into our homes.
We voluntarily buy our own tracking devices. We eagerly wait in long lines outside of stores to spend over $1,000 on the newest smartphone.
We cheerfully purchase smart home assistants, unbox them, plug them into our kitchen counters and our bedside tables, and connect them to the internet.
We are actively funding our own monitoring. These devices track our precise geographical location at all times. They listen to our voices to target us with advertising.
They monitor what we read, how long we linger on a specific photograph, who we communicate with, and what our heart rate is through our smartwatches.
Orwell thought the government would have to use the threat of violence to get us to accept a telescreen.
He never could have predicted that if you just made the telescreen sleek, shiny, and able to play games, the population would gladly pay for the privilege of being monitored 24 hours a day.
It is a profoundly ironic twist on his vision. Surveillance morphed from a state-mandated punishment into a highly desirable, status-signaling consumer product.
And it is not just the surveillance technology that has materialized. We're also witnessing the organic development of a modern form of newspeak in the digital age.
Yes, the way we use language is changing at a breakneck pace because of the digital tools we use to communicate.
Think about social media platforms, particularly ones like Twitter or X, which were built entirely around strict character limits. You are only allowed to type a tiny number of letters per message.
When you artificially constrain the space available for language, you inevitably sacrifice nuance and clarity. Complex political arguments are reduced to bite-sized inflammatory slogans.
I make a thought fit on a small mobile screen. People have to shorten their words, completely abandon proper punctuation, and strip away all the context.
It is a technological, voluntary shrinking of our vocabulary. It is exactly what the Ministry of Truth was trying to achieve, making thoughts smaller and simpler.
Furthermore, we are seeing the written word being entirely replaced by pictograms through the universal adoption of emojis.
Emojis are a fascinating example of how language mutates in real time online. Instead of typing out a precise emotion or thought, you just send a little cartoon picture.
And what is so interesting is how these simple symbols rapidly begin to take on layered double meanings.
It is important to look at this phenomenon objectively, purely as a study in linguistic evolution. A symbol means whatever the community agrees it means.
For example, in the early days of emojis, a picture of an eggplant, a peach, or a banana simply meant the fruit.
But very quickly, internet users adopted them as widely understood visual codes for sexual anatomy.
The original innocent meaning of the picture is almost completely erased by the new hidden code. And this happens in political spheres too, which gets a lot darker.
Indeed, extremist groups are highly adept at co-opting innocent symbols to bypass content moderation filters.
For instance, Certain neo-Nazi and white supremacist groups operating online in the United States decided to use the simple emoji of a glass of milk or a milk bottle.
As a secret visual marker to signal their ideology to one another on public platforms.
To a normal person, it's just a picture of milk.
Yeah.
But to the group, it's a coded message of racial purity.
We're just observing how these mechanisms work, not judging the politics, but it is terrifying how fast a totally innocent picture can be twisted into a hidden code for hate.
Yeah, it is a very modern digital form of linguistic manipulation, where the surface meaning provides cover for a much darker intent.
It demonstrates the incredible elasticity and vulnerability of language. Now, speaking of the intersection of technology and the modern era, we cannot discuss this book without talking about the actual calendar year of 1984.
And how the burgeoning tech industry reacted to the arrival of that infamous date.
Oh, this is one of the most famous moments in advertising history. We have to talk about the legendary television commercial that aired during the American Super Bowl in January of 1984.
The advertisement was created to launch the new Apple Macintosh computer, and it was directed by the visionary filmmaker Ridley Scott, who had just directed Blade Runner.
The aesthetic of the commercial is incredible. It shows a massive, dark, industrial auditorium filled with hundreds of gray, depressed, identical men.
They're all staring blankly at a giant telescreen where a Big Brother-type figure is giving a droning speech.
Suddenly, this bright, colorful, athletic woman runs down the center aisle, chased by police. She spins around and hurls a heavy sledgehammer directly into the giant screen, smashing it into 1,000 pieces in a burst of light.
The screen fades to white, and a voiceover promises that because Apple is introducing the Macintosh computer, the real year 1984 will not be like the dystopian novel 1984.
The marketing message was brilliant. They were telling the public that technology, specifically Apple's new personal computer, was not going to be a tool for state control.
It was going to be a tool for individual freedom and rebellion. It was going to empower the little guy to break the monopoly of the giant central authority.
However, if we look at the historical data, there is a massive, glaring irony in Apple's positioning of themselves as the scrappy, small underdog fighting against the evil corporate empire.
Which at the time was widely understood to be IBM.
Right. Apple painted themselves as the rebel with the hammer, but the numbers tell a completely different story.
At the end of 1983, right before that commercial aired, Apple was not a small underdog. They actually held a 25% share of the personal computer market.
IBM, the supposed giant they were fighting, held 24%. Apple was already a massive, incredibly powerful, market-leading corporation.
And look at where we are today. That rebel company grew into one of the largest, most valuable tech behemoths in the history of the planet.
They are the ones manufacturing the sleek, glass devices that track our daily lives, monitor our heart rates, and map our faces.
The rebel who smashed the giant screen eventually grew up to become the giant screen itself.
It perfectly illustrates how power accumulates and shifts.
Yeah.
And the history of how the novel 1984 itself has been used as a tool by powerful institutions is equally revealing.
During the Cold War, the book was weaponized.
This is one of those historical facts that sounds entirely made up, but it is true. The book was actively used as anti-communist propaganda by Western intelligence agencies.
The CIA literally attached copies of the novel to gas-filled balloons and floated them across the borders into communist countries, dropping them from the sky.
It was a concerted effort to undermine Soviet authority by showing the citizens a reflection of their own society.
Millions of copies were also physically smuggled into Eastern Bloc nations.
There was a famous Polish publishing group operating in exile out of Paris called Kultura. They took on the massive risk of smuggling the book into Poland behind the Iron Curtain.
And they were so clever about it, they would print the book, but disguise the outside cover to look like a standard, boring Soviet militant propaganda pamphlet so the border guards wouldn't look closely at it.
It served as an intellectual weapon during the Cold War. But the fascinating thing about 1984 is that its relevance did not expire when the Berlin Wall fell.
The data shows that whenever a society feels that its privacy is being violated, they instinctually run back to this specific book.
The ultimate proof of that happened in the summer of 2013 during the massive NSA surveillance scandal in the United States.
A whistleblower revealed the staggering, almost incomprehensible amount of digital data that the American government was secretly collecting on the private communications of regular, everyday citizens.
The scale of the digital dragnet was exposed to the public for the first time, and the cultural reaction was immediate.
Within days of that news breaking, sales of the book 1984 skyrocketed by thousands of percent all over the globe.
It shot to the top of the bestseller lists overnight. People instantly made the connection.
When they feel threatened by an invisible, all-seeing eye, they turn to George Orwell to help them process and understand what is happening to them.
The novel remains our culture's definitive shared vocabulary for understanding the overreach of state power and the systematic destruction of privacy.
So what does this all mean?
We have covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started by looking at a grieving, sick man in the 1940s writing in a freezing room in a post-war world.
And we traced how he managed to sketch out a blueprint that perfectly captures the absolute timeless essence of human oppression.
He fundamentally understood the extreme fragility of truth. He showed us how easily history can be rewritten if we are not paying attention, and how language itself can be intentionally degraded to limit our capacity for independent thought.
And he warned us about the suffocating nature of total surveillance, decades before we willingly put high-definition cameras in our pockets and invited microphones into our bedrooms.
It has been a dark, heavy, but incredibly necessary journey. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us on English Coffee Corner.
Please, if you haven't already, take a moment to subscribe to the channel.
Like this video and drop down into the comments below to leave us your thoughts. We want to hear how you see these concepts playing out in your own life.
Before we go, I would like to leave you, the listener, with one final, deeply chilling thought to mull over.
What is that?
Throughout this deep dive, we have discussed the mechanics of the party, the telescreens, the propaganda, the torture. But we have carefully avoided discussing the actual ending of the novel.
Because it is the most devastating part.
It is. In 1984, the torture Winston endures in Room 101 is not just designed to extract a false confession so the state can execute him.
If they just killed him, he would die a martyr.
The truly terrifying truth of Orwell's ending is that the psychological torture actually works.
It doesn't just break his body, it completely rewires his brain.
Yes, Winston's spirit is entirely, permanently broken. By the final page of the book, as he sits in a cafe looking at a poster, he realizes that the struggle is over.
He has won the victory over himself.
He genuinely, truly loves Big Brother. The state does not just eliminate its enemies, it perfectly remakes them.
Wow.
So I pose this question for you to consider as you go about your day. In our rapidly advancing modern era, where all of our personal photos, our historical records, and our most private communications are completely digitized
Stored on distant clouds.
and can be instantly altered or deleted without leaving a single physical trace.
Yeah.
How long will it be until our own memories, our own history, and our own desires are seamlessly rectified by algorithms?
That is terrifying.
And the most frightening part, will we even notice it happening, or will we have already learned to love the system that controls us?
Just, wow. Let that thought sit with you the next time you scroll through a feed. We will see you next time.